Hello, everybody. Welcome to Dirt Nap City. I'm Alex. I'm here with my buddy Kelly. How's it going, Kelly?
Hey, Alex, I'm doing great. You know, I noticed something. I don't think I've ever heard you say hello that way except on this show. This is the only time you ever say hello.
I say that way to all my friends all the time.
Oh, okay. Well, I must not your friend because I'd never heard it till now. But I appreciate it.
Kelly, I just got finished watching a TV show that was very popular last year. It seemed like everybody loved the show.
2022?
And in 2022, that's right. And you, on social media, I saw that you were the only person I saw that did not like this show. And I am here to tell you that I agree with you. I did not like the Squid Game. And it was one of those things, you know, when you think you're supposed to like something because everybody seemed to really dig it. And I kept waiting for the turn, like hoping that it was going to get better.
When is this going to get better?
It actually got worse.
Oh.
I don't mean I can handle violence and I can handle that kind of stuff. I just didn't think it was very good.
It kind of was a cultural phenomenon, but I just didn't want to invest my time in something that was going to depress me.
Yeah, and it's funny because sometimes I'm all in on these cultural events, and I'm in on at the same time, and sometimes I'm a year or 2 or 5 late. But I think when you do that, you can actually look at it with a more critical eye and not kind of a everybody else is doing this.
Not get swept up in the hoopla.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah. I didn't like it at all. There's a season 2 that I think they're filming, and I was gonna ask you if you plan on watching it. I guarantee you're not gonna watch season 2.
No, not. I'm waiting for season 2 of Ted Lasso. That's more my speed.
I think season 2 already came out on Ted Lasso.
Oh, season 3. Sorry. Yeah.
But
1 and 2 have been out.
What would it say about me if I actually watched season 2? Was that good or bad? Squid Game, like something I know I'm not gonna like.
I would. You want my analysis of what that would mean about you?
Yes.
Okay. Number 1, it could mean that you are the type of person that really wants to find the good or the joy or the value in something. So you keep trying. But number 2, it would also say you don't know when to quit and just say cut your losses. You know, you've heard of sunk costs, right? You already because sometimes people watch other shows or watch season 2 because they watch season 1. Well, I'm already invested in it. You know, I've already spent this time, but you just got to go with the sunk costs. And then number 3, it would tell me you have way too much time on your hands. If you're going to watch a show that you don't even like, then you should really be doing something else.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. Well, enough Squid Game talk. Today is the opposite of Squid Game. We have somebody that's more your style. And by that, I mean happy and jovial.
Yeah, that's what I like.
All right. So you ready to get started?
Let's hear it.
And again, Kelly doesn't know who we've picked. You know because you've clicked on the link, so you know who it is. But Kelly, I'm going to have you try to guess who this person is.
I'm going to guess.
Born in Greenville, Mississippi in 1936.
Greenville, Mississippi, 1936. Okay.
Did you know I was born in Mississippi?
I think I did know that.
Yeah, that's one of those fun facts about me.
Yeah, because really, you know, you think of yourself more as a Michigander or a Texan, but
really, I'm a son of the South.
Son of the South.
Died in New York City in 1990.
Oh, okay.
So he was only 53 when he died.
Wow. Okay.
Which is sobering because that's like our age.
Yeah. Maybe he wasn't very sober and that's why he died, but we'll find out.
Not the case. Not the case. Multiple Emmys, in fact, in the Television Hall of Fame. Also an Academy Award nomination, but for a song. And in fact, that song was deemed worthy of preservation by the Library of Congress, which very few songs are. It's considered culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant at the time.
Okay.
There is a statue of him outside the Student Union at the University of Maryland. There was a stamp made of him, and he's in the Banjo Hall of Fame.
Wow. Well, I mean, the first banjo person I think of is Steve Martin, but I think he's still alive.
He is still alive.
Yeah. And then Roy Clark?
Not known for playing the banjo. That's a little bit of a misdirect.
Oh, okay.
But the song that I was just talking about was deemed important enough that it put the banjo on the map in the 70s.
Was
80s.
it Dueling Banjos?
No.
Was he a country and western style?
No.
So that wasn't his musical
wasn't
style?
Wasn't even a singer.
Okay.
He had one song.
Just happened to have one song.
And did not sing in his actual voice. Put on a character for the song.
Oh, wait a second. Are we talking Jim Henson?
We are talking Jim Henson. Kevin.
Oh! Yes, it's not easy being green.
Oh, man. And the song, of course, was Rainbow Connection.
Yeah, someday they'll find it.
The Rainbow Connection is considered one of the songs in the Library of Congress that was deemed preservation worthy.
Wow.
And the banjo, it had a banjo. I think it was just Kermit and his banjo, basically.
Yeah.
Started off that song.
Well, I think when you told me he played it in character, that really kind of helped me get there. Yeah. And just a quick aside, so that I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Rogers because I used to work for an event company and we did events for PBS, not local channels, but like PBS as a network. So there were a lot of Sesame Street things involved in that. And I never met Jim Henson, but I did get to meet the guy, Carol Spinney, who played Big Bird. The guy whose name I can't remember, who was Elmo, even though he wasn't Sesame Street, and a few other people involved in Children's Television Workshop.
Yeah, I think his name was Kevin. Was it Kevin Klatch who played Elmo?
Yeah, that's right, Kevin Klatch. That's
Clash.
Correct.
Yeah.
Wow. Good memory on that.
Yeah, Jim Henson, what a guy. I mean, I don't know about you, but when I was coming up, as they say, I was all in on Sesame Street. The Sesame Street started the year before I was born, probably the year you were born.
69.
And we kind of grew up with Sesame Street. And then, of course, as we got older, the Muppet Show,
which was hilarious,
was great. And I'll tell you a little bit about how all that came to be. So I'm really happy to be sharing Jim Henson with you today.
Yeah, no, I dig it, and I totally agree. It's Sesame Street was iconic and definitely broke a lot of ground with racism and gender issues, but not beating you over the head with it. They were doing it in a really kind of subversive, that sounds really bad, but a way that you didn't feel like, or people didn't realize they were being taught something.
Yeah, and it's interesting because we've already talked in season 1, we've already talked about Mr. Rogers and we talked about Dr. Seuss. So those are people that were really important to children of that same generation that we come from. But this guy attacked it from a completely different perspective, but had the same kind of influence on us as the other two, I think.
Oh yeah. And honestly, those characters, the Muppets, are still very relevant today. I think most kids could identify Cookie Monster or Kermit the Frog, as you said. Like Miss Piggy, I don't feel like she was ever part of Sesame Street, was she?
No, she wasn't. She was only on the Muppet Show.
Okay, yeah, Miss Piggy, and the my favorite, of course, everybody loves Animal, right? But those two old guys, which I think they actually have names,
Statler and Waldorf.
Oh, nicely done, Statler and Waldorf. Why do we always come here? I guess
Statler and Waldorf. Yeah, love those guys. Yeah,
it's like a kind of torture to have to watch a show.
Careful, they're copyright.
Yeah.
And I was surprised you didn't start singing the Rainbow Connection also.
Well, what's funny is I was thinking you were referencing "It's Not Easy Being Green," but now that you say it, he also had a song called "I Don't Want to Live on the Moon." Did you know that one?
No. but it's not
Kermit the
easy
Frog.
being green. They actually sang at his funeral. I was reading about his funeral, and all of his friends came with their Muppets in character and sang. He had said that he didn't want anyone to wear black at his funeral, and so they passed out like these foam butterflies for everybody, like pink and purple butterflies for everyone that was there. And then all of his friends came in character and started singing songs. And It's Not Easy Being Green was the one that kind of brought the house down. And
Oh man, I'm
you can
sure.
only imagine how touching that was. But they said everyone left kind of in a better mood than when they got
Uplifted.
there. Yeah, because he died very
Yeah.
suddenly. Also, he was just on the Arsenio also a week before it all
Wow.
happened. Yeah, he died pretty suddenly. But
Wow.
we'll get into all that.
Yeah.
Um, so when Jim Henson he grew up in Mississippi, but then moved to Maryland, around the University of Maryland area when he was in high school. And when he was in high school, he actually created puppets for a morning show in Washington, D.C., and then went on to the University of Maryland. And then he created a show, kind of a 5-minute comedy short form show called Sam and Friends when he was a freshman. And he
Oh
created
wow.
it with a senior who he had ended up marrying later on. But that show actually included Kermit the Frog. And here's
Wow.
something that's I think is kind of interesting is that you know why they call him Kermit? It's not that common of a name, right?
Actually, I'm glad you said that. I've only ever known one Kermit in my whole life, and that was a friend of my grandparents in Kansas City. His name was Kermit.
Okay, so that was probably around the same age. It's kind of an older name. That he was born in 1936, right? I guess that's a little younger than your grandparents, but
Yeah. Yeah.
um, so he said that when he was a kid, Jim Henson, he only had two close friends, and they were both named Kermit.
Wow.
So when it came time to create a puppet, of course, he named them after the only friends that he ever had, or his best
Wow.
friends that were both named Kermit. And I think that's pretty funny because, like you said, I don't even know anybody. I know of somebody, a basketball coach named Kermit, or a basketball player named Kermit Washington.
Okay.
And then there was a basketball coach, Kermit Davis. So I guess I know two people named Kermit, not personally, both involved with basketball. But it is now naming your kid Kermit, it's impossible to detach the Kermit the Frog
Yeah.
significance from it, right?
Yeah, that's
And
immediately
probably,
that's probably what they would be called all their life, right?
my
You know, and
kids
then
would tease him.
eventually it would turn into like frog legs, and then legs. And they're like, "Why do they call you legs?" Well, my name's Kermit, and I got called
Right.
Kermit the Frog, which became Kermit the Frog Legs, which became legs.
If any of our listeners are named Kermit,
Yes.
please let us know and let us know how that experience has been of being called Kermit. You like it, because I mean it's not like being named Adolf or something. I mean it's not a bad
No.
connotation to be named Kermit, but I could see that you might get teased. And tell us if that bothered you or not.
And
We'll
let us
see.
know if you spell it with a K or a C.
I've never heard of it spelled with a C.
No, I
It'd
haven't
be
either. That would probably be
Sermon,
Sermit. Yes. It's Kermit, damn it.
So he started as a studio arts major. He was a very creative guy, but he took a puppetry class. And then through the puppetry class, he was introduced to the craft and textiles department in the home economics department at Maryland. And he ended up getting his degree in home economics. He was fascinated with trying to find the perfect material to make puppets with. And he
And
did a
where the
lot of
forks and knives go.
yeah, but he did a lot of experimenting with different materials, different textiles, and you notice that at the time, I guess most puppets were made out of wood, and so by using kind of a foam rubber, and then you know just other
Cloth.
cloth and over foam rubber, you were kind of able to do more freedom and of movements. And
So this was like
he moved
as
the
opposed to
arms,
like the ventriloquist puppet, right? The more
which were
traditional.
made out of woods, and
Yeah.
and their mouths
More
just kind of moving
mechanical.
up and down, right?
Yeah.
So, and also, so the word Muppet was a cross between puppet and marionette.
Ah.
And the marionettes, if you can picture those, kind of you have the wood cross and then the strings, and you move.
Yeah.
Those were strings that you move, and Muppets are actually the arms are moved by rods, not
Yeah. That
strings, and they're
from
moved
below.
from below or from the side. So if
Yeah.
you ever see interviews with him, sometimes he'd have the Muppet just like on his like next to him, and he would kind of move the arms. I was watching an interview with he was on Johnny Carson, and he had Dr. Teeth. Do you remember who Dr. Teeth was?
Yeah. Yeah. He was one of the Muppets.
Yeah, he was like a rock star kind of
Yeah.
guy.
Yeah. Yeah. I do remember
And
him.
it was amazing. Just you just forget that it's controlled by him. He's sitting there and he's like arguing with him, but not
It's
in the
like a
old
whole other
style.
person.
Yeah, not in the old ventriloquist way, although there was a lot of that in there, but it was like he'd be talking, and there was another part with Kermit, and he would be talking about about the Muppet Show, which Kermit wasn't on at the time, and Kermit would just be shaking his head the whole time he was talking. Kermit is reacting to Jim Henson talking about this great show, and Kermit was shaking his head and he was saying, "It's trash. This show's no good."
Little jealousy.
And it was really funny because
He
you
was
realize
green
that
with
the
envy.
whole time he's talking, he's reacting with his hand. It was unbelievable. If you want to go watch YouTube, the Johnny Carson interviews, there's a ton of things of Jim Henson just on talk shows.
So quick question about that. I wonder, and maybe you know the answer, maybe you don't, because this isn't something that would be common, but I wonder if when he started, puppets aren't necessarily designed to be like ventriloquist, right? I mean, especially those, they were always by themselves, right? Doing their thing on Sesame
Like
Street.
Punch and Judy.
Yeah.
Oh, you mean
and
before? Yeah, before Sesame Street. Yeah.
Well, I'm talking about Sesame Street though. Those puppets or Muppets were controlled from below some sort of a surface. There'd be a wall or a chair or something that the human was hiding behind, and so they didn't have to not move their lips. They could move their
Right.
lips. They didn't have to ventriloquize or whatever it's called. And
Right.
so I wonder if he started like if he was doing the puppet and he was just ba 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 like moving his mouth, but then he eventually started not moving his mouth so he could do it with the puppet and him at the same time.
And when he's on the talk shows, he doesn't really. It's not a great ventriloquist act. Like he's moving his mouth, but you don't really care either.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Jim Henson, was kind of a soft-spoken guy, and actually his real voice is very much like Kermit's. It's just more affected, maybe, when he talks like Kermit. But it's not like he's trying to make you really think that is another person, but you actually end up thinking that because he's just so good with his hand movements. It's just pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But he did experiment with letting the puppeteer work off camera, and the idea, like you say, where they would just be sitting in a chair and everything would be filmed above them or to the side, and giving the whole camera frame belonged to the puppet themselves. So putting the puppeteer off camera, and it seems so obvious to us now, but it was pretty revolutionary, and it was kind of marrying the old vaudeville ventriloquist with television, which was a fairly new medium, and people were experimenting, and he was on television very early. I mean, we're talking this 5-minute show that he did when he was a freshman, and this was 1958.
Wow.
That was the early days of television.
Yeah. Black
there were
and
still
white.
people. Yeah, there were still people getting their first TVs in the late 50s.
Yeah.
So yeah, he definitely started experimenting with this stuff. And then when he graduated, he moved to Europe, and he didn't really think of being a puppeteer as a job that he would have, but he started studying some of the European puppets that take that stuff very seriously, and he started seeing how they looked at that. And I think he had decided, I can really change the art form here.
Wow.
So when he came back, he and his wife Jane founded Muppets Inc., that later became the Jim Henson Company, in 1958. And he used to go on talk shows like Steve Allen and Jack Parr and Ed Sullivan. And
this was before Sesame Street?
Oh yeah. This was in the 60s. You know, Sesame Street didn't start till 1969. So this is all throughout the 60s and late 50s.
So he was a puppeteer entertainer. Like he was a guy that like came onto these shows and was known for, you have these crazy things called Muppets. What's that all about?
Well, actually, when you'd watch like Ed Sullivan, you would only see the puppets. And then at the end, maybe he'd bring them out. In fact, Ed Sullivan called him Jim Newsom and his puppets.
Oh, that's awesome.
But he started getting into advertising, and he had these two characters called Wilkins and Wontkins, and it was kind of genius when you think of probably the way advertising was back in the 50s. It was very much buy this product, here's all the features, not a lot of humor, just kind of these are the bare bones. And he had these two puppets, and Wilkins always loved the product, and Wontkins always hated the product. He would say,
Oh,
"That's
Wilkins and Wontkins.
right,
Like Goofus and Gallant.
sure." And like just like Statler and Waldorf, they kind of would bicker, and Wontkins would always hate whatever that was they were trying to sell. And now you can imagine in the 50s pitching an idea to a company saying, "Well, here's an idea. This character's not going to like your product, and they're going to bicker." That was probably really breaking a taboo, right?
He went into Marlboro and said, Wilkins is gonna just puff away, and Wontkins will be like, "Oh, don't do that. That's not good."
Yeah, I don't. They didn't do any cigarettes, but he would. But these characters would advertise lots of different things. So you'd see him on a coffee commercial or gas station.
Are there YouTube videos with Wilkins and Wontkins?
I think so. In fact, Cookie Monster actually started out as a character for a Frito-Lay snack called Munchos. That was when Cookie Monster was first introduced. It wasn't cookies; it was this snack.
Munchos.
But Wilkins and Wontkins were kind of the first thing, and he was really making puppets not for kids but for advertising.
Yeah. Okay.
And then he hired Frank Oz in 1963. And Frank Oz, became a later collaborator.
Oh yeah. I mean, he's Yoda, right? Frank Oz was Yoda.
The two of them were Bert and Ernie. They were Kermit and Miss Piggy, and they were Kermit and Fozzie.
Hey, Kermit! Some
great chemistry in those teams, and it was him and Frank Oz. In 1969, Sesame Street had already started, or he didn't create Sesame Street. Sesame Street was already, about to go into production, and they liked his commercials, and they approached him about, hey, why don't you join us and create little puppets for what we're trying to do, which is educate kids in a different kind of way through public television. So it's not like he started Sesame Street.
Do you know if that was Children's Television Network?
Workshop? Children's Television Workshop?
Children's Television Workshop? Yeah. Was that who started Sesame Street? Or was that something that came later?
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
It was Children's Television Workshop.
Okay, so that was not him. That wasn't Jim Henson. He collaborated with Children's Television Workshop, or was employed by them, or contracted with them. But okay, so that was a misconception, because I always
when you
think
thought about it,
Sesame Street was sort of his jam.
Yeah, and when you think about it, Sesame Street doesn't just consist of Muppets. That's just a part of it,
right?
They kind of populate the street, and they have little skits and things like that. But there's other parts of Sesame Street that don't involve
Mr. Hooper.
The Muppets. And actually he said, this is be great to join these people because I'm kind of tired of doing commercials. So he walked away from the commercial game and started doing Sesame Street in 1969. Now by 1975, he was kind of chomping at the bit to, not that he was sick of doing kids programming, but he didn't think that puppets were just for kids, and he kind of wanted to get back to that. So I don't know if you remember this, but he actually was on the first season of Saturday Night Live. They actually had segments with his Muppets.
No, really?
Didn't work. The writers on Saturday Night Live didn't. One of the writers said, "I won't write for Felt."
he wasn't feeling it. It wasn't felt by him.
So it just didn't work. They couldn't figure out what the tone should be for the Muppets. So if you watch some of the early episodes, I think George Carlin was the very first host of Saturday Night Live in 1975. It was only that season they would have these little interstitial pre-recorded things, I think, and it never really worked out.
But were they sort of PG-13,
Yeah,
late night
yeah.
comedy kind of stuff?
They were very like hippie kind of kind of things, and I don't think they were necessarily bawdy, but they weren't for kids.
Yeah.
But even when he would go on Johnny Carson, he would not. He would say things like, "So Johnny Carson in this episode with Kermit the Frog, he'd say, so Johnny would say, so Kermit, how's your love life?" And Kermit he goes, "I work on Sesame Street. How do you think my love life is?" He goes, but he's like, but I work on a kids show. Why would you ask me about my sex life? And it was kind of fun like that. It wasn't like forbidden that way.
Right. But
It was just kind of playing around with them. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So he was doing Sesame Street, and he was Saturday Night Live didn't really work out. But in 1976, he decided, well, why don't I just make a bunch of new Muppets only for not for Sesame Street, but for a more adult oriented, but not dirty or anything.
More of a primetime show, like a variety primetime show. Yeah.
And had the idea for the Muppet Show. So he went to every network, and all the networks turned him down. They said, we don't want kid shows in prime time. He said, it's not a kid show. They said, yeah, but we don't need Sesame Street in prime time. He said, it's not Sesame Street. They said, yeah, go sell it somewhere else.
Wow.
And all the networks turned him down. So he went to the UK, and they loved the idea. So the entire Muppet Show, all this, it was from 1976 to 1981. All those episodes were filmed in the UK, and it was syndicated.
Oh, so it was on for five years.
Yeah, worldwide syndication. And so each episode would get like 235 million people watching.
Wow.
Just to give you an idea, today, a hit show maybe has 20 million people watching it.
So 10 times that audience. Yeah, I remember watching the Muppet Show like live, on TV, NBC or whatever it was on at the time. And I remember actually that was something that we all laughed at. Like my parents thought it was funny. My sister and I both thought it was funny. And so it was kind of a cool he really did a good job of putting the humor at a lot of levels. And then I remember a lot of really famous actors and actresses were guests. That was kind of the thing, was they'd bring on I don't know who sings the song, but
A-list people. Like,
yeah,
you were nobody unless you got on the Muppet Show.
I remember Baby Baby Don't Get Hooked on Me. You know that song, Baby Baby Don't Get Hooked on Me? And I think Miss Piggy's like a mermaid, and she's like swinging on a hook or something.
Yeah.
Glenn Campbell? Who is that?
Mac Davis.
Mac Davis, that's right.
Lubbock's own Mac Davis, actually. Shout out to Lubbock.
Yeah, it was the Muppet Show was brilliant, and I'm glad it was accepted when it was, because I feel like it might have been either behind its time or ahead of its time. It was just a weird little, maybe it was ahead of its time. I don't think it would work today.
Super corny. But at the time, Hee Haw was on, and
talk about
Sonny and Cher show, and all these really cheesy, corny things. So there was a lot of variety shows. So you're right, it probably wouldn't work today. Yeah, I think it definitely worked at the time. You might have also remembered Baryshnikov was on an episode, and he and Miss Piggy danced to Swine Lake.
I actually don't remember that, but that's awesome.
But if you're a 10-year-old kid, how else are you going to know who Baryshnikov is, right?
Or Swine Lake or Swan Lake, what?
Yeah, I mean, that's what's cool, is that they kind
ballet.
of introduce little kids to stuff that we wouldn't really know about otherwise. Yeah. I feel like I'm more cultured because of his little jokes and the sides that he would put in there. Now, he quit the Muppet Show in Muppet Show stopped in 1981. He actually quit to do movies.
Was
So,
it canceled do you
no,
know
he stopped doing it because
he
he
said
wanted to concentrate
we're
on
done?
movies.
Yeah,
So
and of course the Muppet movies, the Muppets Take Manhattan.
Muppet movie came out in 1979, and that was Rainbow Connection was nominated for an Academy Award for Best Song. It didn't win, but 1981 was The Great Muppet Caper. Do you remember that one?
Yeah, yeah, I do.
And then also in 1981 was George Lucas approached him and said, "Hey, here's a character I want to I'm thinking about. Can you make a puppet of like this old sage?" And Yoda was created out of that. And then
Wow.
originally Jim Henson was going to voice that, and he said, "No, I'll have Frank Oz do that instead." But that was Jim Henson's creation, that
Wow.
collaboration, and Yoda, still with us today.
Yeah, Baby Yoda, and Yoda's more popular than ever.
1982, he made a movie called Dark Crystal. Did you ever see that
Oh
movie?
yes, Skeksis and Gelflings.
So that's kind of your wheelhouse, I guess.
Yeah,
It was not critically acclaimed, but he really
Skeksis and
liked it.
Gelflings can be friends.
it kind of sounded like Yoda actually.
Yeah, I don't think they had much range. I mean, compared to like Mel Blanc,
Yeah,
I don't think the voices, there wasn't a lot of variety. It was everything either sounded like Jim Henson or Frank Oz. I mean, Miss Piggy sounds just like Yoda,
yeah,
right?
yeah. True, true.
And Bert,
Yep.
right? And then Kermit sounds just like all the rest of them. So, Muppets Take Manhattan came out in 1984.
Yeah, I definitely remember that one.
And then in 1986, he made a movie called Labyrinth
Oh
with
yeah,
David Bowie,
yeah, yeah.
and now it's like a cult classic, but at the time it wasn't well received, and that really bothered him. That was kind of the end of him trying to do kind of adult things. I think it really hit him hard, much like the Lady Godiva book hit Dr. Seuss hard. It was maybe I can't do things for adults. Maybe I just better stick to little kids. So then after that, he created Fraggle Rock and Muppet Babies.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that was kind of awful.
Yeah, right. So I feel like Labyrinth was kind of his jumping the shark, right?
What when? Yes. To go back to see Evil Knievel episode.
He created something called the Jim Henson Hour. That was an NBC show that he thought that maybe he could mix in kind of like a Muppet show, but mix in some more adult humor. And that, I think it lasted maybe 12 episodes and was canceled. And that really hit him. He decided that he wanted to spend more time with his family. The only way his kids got to spend any time with him was by working for the company, because
Yeah.
he was just all in. So he felt that stress of not being able to spend time with his family. So he sold the Jim Henson Company to Disney for $200 million
Wow.
in 1989. But in doing so, I think they were playing hardball with him, and it was a pretty rough negotiation. And he ultimately died of a bacterial infection. Like, it was actually toxic shock syndrome, but from like almost like a strep kind of infection. And they said
Elevated stress levels.
if he would have got to the doctor just a little bit earlier, it might have saved him. But Frank Oz says that the Disney negotiations might have killed him. That had just
Wow.
because he kept getting sick and he wouldn't recover, and then that.
And how awful is that to, work so hard all those years, build this thing that you're proud of, and whether you agree with people cashing out or not, I think a lot of people want to do that. They've worked hard, they want to sell the company, they want to have the money to leave for their family, to have some amazing experiences with your family, travel, all that sort of thing, and then just to die a year later. That's,
I know. Well, the
sad.
worst part is the 200 million he never even got, or his family never got, because once he died, then Disney said, "Well, we were paying for Jim Henson, and he's not around anymore, so we're not giving you 200 million." And I think they sued Disney, and I think they ended up settling at like 50 million. So because
Wow.
they were buying the guide.
Yeah, I guess he might have stayed on and said that the Muppets tasted like wallpaper paste or something.
Yeah. So it's just another example of once you start negotiating with the big guys, they're they're gonna own you, I guess.
Wow.
Now he's on the Hollywood Walk of Fame as himself and as Kermit. And there's only 3 other people who are on the Hollywood Walk of Fame as themselves and a character. Do you want to guess who any of them are? They're all kids
Okay.
characters.
Okay. Would one of them be Barney?
No, you don't know who that Barney creator is, though. These are people that are famous and they're creators.
They have a character that's famous too.
Yeah.
I don't know, man. Hit me.
So Walt Disney and Mickey Mouse.
Oh, of course.
Mel Blanc and Bugs Bunny.
Okay.
And then the third one, maybe not as obvious, Mike Myers and Shrek.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, Shrek is still a big deal.
Sure. Sure.
And Mike Myers outside of Shrek is a big deal. Yeah, it's interesting that they would put that there would be fictitious characters on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, but then they're actors, because Mike Myers did a lot of other stuff besides Shrek, right? So he's, he kind of earned it outside of Shrek, and then Shrek was its own thing. Whereas with Jim Henson, I would say his crowning achievement was Kermit the Frog, or his most famous thing was Kermit the Frog.
Oh, so you think Kermit should be in, but not Jim Henson? Or maybe no fictitious characters.
Yeah, no. I mean, almost. I mean, like Walt Disney, he Disney is synonymous with so many things. And then Mickey Mouse, yes, of course. I get that. Who was the other one you said?
Mel Blanc and Bugs Bunny.
Yeah. Did Mel Blanc do much besides Bugs Bunny? I mean, I know he did other voices, but...
You mean like in his career, did he do anything other than Looney Tunes?
Yeah.
I mean, he did, like on the Jack Benny show and things like that. But that was his biggest.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. I mean, I feel like Mel Blanc and Jim Henson are a little questionable as Hollywood, but then again, they had a huge impact. I guess are directors and producers allowed on the Hollywood Walk of Fame?
If you're creating a TV show with 200 million people watching,
Okay.
Like I said,
I'm not hating on Jim Henson. He's a good guy.
So some of the Sesame Street Muppets that you may be familiar with are, of course, Bert and Ernie.
Of course.
And so I'll say some of these people, and if you want to, there's a interesting kind of Wikipedia thing about kind of the characteristics that some of these characters have or we're supposed to teach kids about. So like,
well, there's a lot of questions about Bert and Ernie's relationship, right? What was that all about?
Yeah, they were friends, man. They were roommates. They were friends. I don't think even in later days, I don't think they ever claimed to be more than friends. But if they were, that's fine too. I don't even know if they were adults. Were they?
Yeah, I kind of felt like they were balding a little. Well, they had some hair. They had kind of receding hairlines, though.
Bert was Ernie's best friend, and he was fascinated by pigeons. He liked oatmeal. He collected paper clips and bottle caps, and Ernie was kind of the more mischievous one, right?
He laughed like this.
Yeah, and he would take baths with. Let's face it, if it was just Bert, that wouldn't be very
rubber ducky.
Fun. Bert was a great straight man, though, right?
Rubber ducky, you're the one. You make bath time so much fun. Rubber ducky, you're the rubberest ducky I know.
There's another copyright claim that we'll have to do something about.
Hold on. I'm going to say this, and I don't know if it'll make the episode or not. But maybe we make a bonus cut for our Patreon supporters. But I have a friend named Jim. He always does this where he'll fart really loud, and then he'll go, "What, Ernie?" He'll go. It's like saying Bert. What, Ernie?
Sounds like a lovely guy.
He is a good guy, actually. That's not the only thing he does. That's not why he would be on the Hollywood Walk of Fame.
Got it.
That's like the Jack Benny show for him.
We already talked about Cookie Monster.
C is for cookie, that's good enough for me. C is for cookie, that's good enough for me.
kids today, like little kids today, still know Cookie Monster. The licensing for that stuff has been unbelievable. Do you remember Count though? Do you remember the
Oh
Count?
yeah, 1, 2, 3.
The Count. His full name was Count Von Count.
I went to the Texas Renaissance Festival. Did you ever go to that in Magnolia?
Mm-hmm.
And I got a Count. It was like the Sesame Street Count puppet. Like I actually had that puppet for a long time, and I was, ha 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 ha, 1, 2, 3, 4. Hey, hey, hey.
Did you? Yeah. So your kids must have loved that.
That was this is when I was a kid.
But now, haven't they seen it?
No, the
When they
puppet's
were
gone.
kids. Oh,
I think it was a victim of a dog.
Oh, yeah. We've already talked about Elmo a little bit. Elmo came in, actually, according to Wikipedia, Elmo came in 1979.
Yeah, I think Elmo got popular later. I do think Elmo was a sort of side character, a smaller character on the show, but became popular in later days.
Yeah, it said Kevin Clash did him from 1985 to 2012. That's probably when he was big. It was in the late 80s, early 90s. Grover, Grover.
Hey, Kermit, baby!
Yeah, what's your perception of Grover?
I loved Grover. He was the party guy. He was kind of he did this with his arms, and he would kind of and he had the googly eyes, and yeah, I loved Grover.
He was known as the infinitely optimistic one who was also honest and wise.
Yeah. He wasn't like the guy who got his yucks by putting other people down. He just was always in a good mood, and yeah. No, I kind of forgotten about Grover, but I dug on Grover.
Yeah. What about Guy Smiley? Do you remember Guy Smiley?
Yes, he was the game show host and TV, like sort of making fun. He was sort of the Troy McClure. Remember Troy McClure from The Simpsons?
And I think Guy Smiley was early on too. I think he was one of Jim Henson's favorites. Was Guy Smiley? He was the everyone's favorite talk show host. Guy Smiley.
I loved Guy Smiley. Yep.
And then of course Kermit was basically the first Muppet, right?
Yep.
They call him the calm in the eye of the storm. He was the voice of reason among all the insanity of all the monsters. But Sesame Workshop doesn't own Kermit. He's one of the few ones that they don't own. That's owned by
because he was probably created before he joined Sesame Street, and so it was still Jim Henson's. Whereas some of them that were created while he was being paid by Sesame Street maybe belonged to Sesame Street.
Now let's talk about Oscar the Grouch.
Oh yeah,
I think Oscar the Grouch is a really interesting character. They said that Oscar gave kids permission to feel grouchy and to demonstrate differing opinions, and as a lesson for how to adapt to different personalities, because everybody else had to deal with Oscar and being kind of grouchy. Oscar was a miserable character, but he didn't hate him. He was just having a bad day.
He was literally the likable Grouch.
Right. He was like, he got dealt a bad hand, right?
Lived in a trash can. But you know what? He loved trash. I think he actually had a song called "I Love Trash."
He does.
It was like an ode to trash. So I wouldn't say he was dealt a bad hand. I think he just there are certain people, and I know a lot of people like this, who give sort of a grouchy persona in sort of a cute and clever way. So it's a lovable grouchy persona. And I think that was where he was coming from. But
the aforementioned Carol Spinney did his voice as well.
Okay.
And he said he based his voice on a New York City cab driver that he encountered. So that voice was just like a real person.
It's like if you ever did a voice for a puppet and it was based on Smitty, the hot dog salesman in New Orleans.
Right, exactly. Now, there was a character. I watched an episode recently. I make it sound like I watched the show recently. You
were doing research.
Episode.
Yeah.
Right.
That's what you tell your wife is, honey, I'm just doing research.
There's a great episode in 1980 where they have a character called Ronald Grump. And Ronald Grump was a real estate developer that came and tricked Oscar into moving into Grump Towers. and ultimately kicked Oscar out of his trash can because
Evicted him.
he evicted him.
Wow.
He was like this horrible, evil character who tricked him and just to make money. It was pretty awesome. Ronald Grump.
Ronald Grump. Wow. Did you know, just as an aside, did you know that The Simpsons, there was an episode of The Simpsons in the 90s where they are doing a, look forward, like a future, like it's showing what the future is going to look like. And Donald Trump is the president.
I know. I know. I think Lisa was vice president or something.
Yeah. Yeah. She was. Yeah.
Yeah. It's crazy. Do you remember Snuffleupagus?
Oh, absolutely. He was the one that was Big Bird's friend that they didn't believe existed.
Right, because he was like people thought it was Big Bird's imaginary friend.
Right, and it wasn't because only Big Bird could see him. He just always conveniently disappeared when other people appeared. It was like he would be talking to him, and then all of a sudden, okay, Big Bird, I gotta go, and then Big Bird would turn around, and there'd be the whole gang. What were you doing, Big Bird? I was talking to Mr. Snuffleupagus. And then they turned back and he wasn't there. And he was huge. Like, where did he go?
Yeah, I know, right? There was a kind of a decision that they made in 1985. They decided that they didn't want him to be an imaginary friend anymore.
I remember that.
Reveal him. You were 15.
I know, but I do remember that because as a news story or as I don't remember but I remember that them making that decision because they didn't want kids to feel like they couldn't have an imaginary friend, because I think they would always sort of chastise Big Bird about it.
Yeah, it said they revealed him as real to teach children that their perceptions could be trusted. So then everybody could see Snuffleupagus.
Yeah,
Snuffy. I think it was more fun when it was kind of the Shakespearean mistaken identity, like you couldn't, where did he go? And I thought that was fun. So those were the kind of the Sesame Street specific Muppets, but then there were some great ones too that they'd have from time to time that they'd bring, like Placido Flamingo and Meryl Sheep and just like nods to the parents.
I think I remember Charo being a guest on the Muppet Show one time.
Well, when you think of Muppet Show, the Muppets there were like, of course, Kermit, but not Kermit a lot. He would like introduce it. In fact, on that Johnny Carson episode, he was complaining because he only had one line that was like they brought him in to introduce, but then he was it always seemed like be behind the scenes.
He was almost like the announcer,
stage manager, yeah,
stage manager or announcer, like. And didn't he at the beginning go, "Hey everybody, it's the Muppet Show"?
Yeah. And then Miss Piggy was, of course, the breakout star of.
Yeah, and she had a crush on Kermit.
Right. Then Fozzie Bear, you remember Fozzie?
Hey, it's Fozzie Bear.
He was the host of the show, right? Like he was like the whole thing was like old vaudeville, right?
I didn't mind Fozzie. He wasn't one of my favorite characters. He was like bright red and wore a top hat.
He was supposed to be like a vaudeville comedian and a really bad comedian.
He was almost like, who's the guy who got no respect?
Rodney Dangerfield, yeah.
Almost like Rodney Dangerfield of the Muppets.
According to Frank Oz, Fozzie's such a bad comedian that he can't afford good joke writers and he can't write good jokes, but he's still a good character. Miss Piggy, was strong and feminine, but domineering and demanding.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and then Gonzo
with the big nose.
We didn't know exactly what species he was.
Yeah, he was very unusual looking.
But then in Muppets from Space, he was revealed to be an alien.
Okay. Yeah, I remember Muppets in Outer Space.
Then do you remember Rolf the dog? They played the piano.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. He didn't really talk too much. He mostly just played piano, right?
They say that he actually started in Purina dog commercials. But he was a master of the double take also, which is really cool to be able to do with your hand. To do the double take.
What does that mean? The double take with your
hand?
when
you look at something and then you look away and then you look again, like that old comedic trick that you do.
So it just has a funny just kind of what?
And then of course you have Animal.
Yeah.
Animal was the drummer for Dr. Teeth, whose Dr. Teeth band was Dr. Teeth and the Electric Mayhem.
That's right. Oh man, well done.
I mean, Animal was just like a rock drummer. He was just going crazy all the time. There's a lot of Animal in Dave Grohl.
Yeah.
With the hair and just the
Yep.
kind of rock
The
star,
arms
skinny
going everywhere. Just
skinny rock star with the bandanas on his hands,
Yeah.
and just really a cool.
I'd forgotten about Dr. Teeth.
Yeah, Dr. Teeth.
That's
was
what a
really
great
awesome.
name. Wow.
Yeah, these are great characters.
Do you think Jim Henson came up with most of these? Do you think he was directly involved in all
I
these?
do. Yeah, I really do. I think he came up with the idea of the personalities, and really they really mimicked what you'd see, kind of the caricatures of characters that we saw in rock music or hippies. There was a lot of kind of hippies that were out there.
I remember some of them with like beads and kind of their flowers on them and stuff like that. There was a female character like that. I don't remember her name, but
Lips.
Maybe. Was she had kind of beads hanging down, like braided hair with and then lots of flowers and
her name was Lips.
Okay. And she had big lips.
She had totally a name of somebody that would have been famous back then.
Yeah.
She had kind of like a Goldie Hawn vibe to her.
Yeah. Wow, I didn't remember her name.
Do you remember Dr. Bunsen Honeydew and Beaker?
I remember Beaker. I didn't know Dr. Honeydew's name, but yeah, I remember Beaker. What did he say? He was like beep 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 or something like that. Me.
Yeah.
That was it. Me. And then what about the Swedish Chef?
The Swedish Chef was the best, right?
Chop chop.
Yep. And then the funny part about the Swedish Chef, the reason that was so funny is that was originally a collaboration between Jim Henson and Frank Oz, where Jim Henson would be the puppet and Frank Oz would be the hands.
Oh.
So if you've ever seen like an improv game where
one person's the hands and one person is the voice, and then they can't control the hands, so they don't know what's going to happen. Yeah,
it was kind of their way of improvising. So I don't think later on, when I don't know if it was always like that, but that's how that came out. And then of course you had Sam the Eagle. Do you remember Sam the Eagle?
Yeah. He was kind of older. Like kind of had an old guy vibe. He was bald.
Yeah, and he was supposed to be like a cross between Uncle Sam and Richard Nixon.
Yes. I didn't know that, but I remember Sam the Eagle.
And then, of course, Statler and Waldorf that we already talked about.
Yeah.
There's some great characters that you probably hadn't thought of in a long time.
You named a whole bunch of them just now, like Lips and the Eagle and Guy Smiley. I hadn't thought of Guy Smiley in forever.
What's cool is that these were monsters. A lot of them were monsters, but none of them were scary at all. They had a great way to make these things just look lovable.
We talked about that in Dr. Seuss as well. Like the monsters were never scary. They were always approachable. They always had big eyes, really empathetic and expressive. And yeah, I agree. I think, and I might have even said in the Dr. Seuss episode, I might have even said kind of like the Muppets.
That is probably easier said than done, though. I mean, I remember reading about Mickey Mouse on how the reason they give him gloves is because it's unseemly to just have these rats' hands. They don't make it. There's nothing cute about rats.
Yeah. You just imagine their talons cutting into your flesh or something.
Exactly. So you put on gloves, and all of a sudden he's cuddly. But these monsters, these furry monsters, were all cuddly. I think also, didn't Jim Henson make I didn't see this in my research, but didn't he make the monsters for Where the Wild Things Are? You ever see that movie?
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, that was a book, right? And then was it made into a movie?
Yeah, it was.
I don't think I ever saw the movie for that, but I wouldn't be surprised because I do feel like he was behind the scenes in a lot of Hollywood productions where they needed that sort of what did they call that? Not animatics. That sort of half computer generated, but like Jabba the Hutt, for example.
Oh, yeah.
I'll bet Jim Henson had something to do with Jabba the Hutt. And that little guy that sat on Jabba's lap, that little creature with the big ears, it kind of looked like Gonzo. You know who I'm talking about? It was like a little creature that was kind of like cute, but it was very Muppet looking.
If you've come for Star Wars trivia, I'm not your guy. You're the one with the Star Wars poster back
Well,
there.
just Google Jabba the Hutt or creature or
Yeah,
Jabba
no,
the Hutt's
he
pet.
wasn't cuddly at all. He wasn't nice looking at all. He did look scary.
Jabba?
Yeah.
He didn't look. Yeah, I mean, but what I'm saying is he was he was sort of half puppet and half computer generated. So he was this weird mix of the two. And then, of course, you remember like Chuck E. Cheese.
Yeah, animatronics. Yeah, like the things at Disney World.
When you would go to Chuck E. Cheese and they would play the song, like they had a little band of Chuck E. Cheese and his buddies up there that would actually play a song, and it was really kind of creepy.
Yeah, I'm looking at Jabba the Hutt here, and I don't think Jim Henson had anything to do with that.
No, I'm talking about the little creature on him. Do you see that?
Yeah. No, I'm not seeing
Jabba
that.
the Hutt's little creature.
Yeah.
Hold on.
He kind of did look like the Michelin Man, though. For sure.
Jabba the Hutt pet. That's what I just Googled. Yes, Google Jabba the Hutt pet.
I remember Pizza the Hut from Spaceballs.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, I see this thing. It does look like Gonzo. Salacious Crumb. His name was Salacious B. Crumb.
Dude, what a great find. What a great pick. I can tell you the one I'm working on is polar opposite of Jim Henson. I mean, could not be any further from Jim Henson. So it's really interesting. I was in a very different mindset because I was trying to finish it before our call. And so, yeah, that'll be later in the season. But
I think it's telling, though, that, maybe because I'm doing the show with you, that a lot of these people that I'm coming up with are people from my childhood, and you remind me of my childhood, I guess, in some ways. So I keep coming up with these figures from even though I didn't know you in the 70s, I keep coming up with these people from long my past. So
yeah. Well, no, Jim Henson is absolutely. I mean, actually, a lot of stuff you told me I didn't know about him. And then just some of the stories about like his funeral and his Muppet, like how he started the Muppet Show after Sesame Street, how he didn't own Sesame Street, just facts I didn't know about Jim Henson. So thank you.
All right, man. Well, thank you everybody for tuning in to Dirt Nap City, the show about interesting people who happen to be dead. Join us again for another exciting episode. We'll learn about somebody who is no longer with us, but was interesting while they were. Take care, everybody. Bye.